But the Los Angeles Rams have said, we are going to put the first name on the trade block this offseason, potentially one of the biggest names to emerge onto the trading block this offseason. We're going to start early. And according to Cooper Kupp, it is going to happen soon. Well, the LA Rams have informed their star wide receiver, former offensive player of the year, and a guy that the Pittsburgh Steelers were interested in 3 months ago, that he will no longer be with the team and that the franchise is moving on this offseason, helping him find a new NFL home, somewhere where he feels comfortable, is competing for a championship. And he, in a very long statement, made it known that he's not happy about it and that he is determined to continue playing well, which I took as whoever's getting Cooper Kupp is about to have a stud, because there's a difference between somebody running their mouth and getting super pissed and looking for a new home and somebody who has been given up on, who has proven time and time again in this league that he is a stud, and that is Cooper Kupp. So the question emerges immediately, and I was tagged, shout out to Connor if you are listening, tagged me on Twitter literally the second that it dropped, which that I saw that notification before I saw Cooper Kupp's tweet was Noah Strackbein, let's go do it. And I was like, what are we doing? There it was. Cooper Kupp carries a $20 million cap hit to the team that acquires him in 2025 and a $19.85 million cap hit in 2026 if he remains on the roster. He will be pushing 33 years old heading into the 2026 season. He obviously dealt with injuries the last 2 years, but he had 710 yards in just 12 games this past season, on top of 6 touchdowns, I believe, and finished his season off with 110 yards in the loss to, I believe, the Eagles. Is that who they lost to? The Eagles in the divisional round. I mean, look, Cooper Kupp might not be offensive player of the year material, but he is no schlump. And the Pittsburgh Steelers at the trade deadline were looking for Cooper Kupp. They wanted Cooper Kupp. Me and you were on the show talking about how sources have told us that the Pittsburgh Steelers look at Cooper Kupp as their guy, top option that could be available for them. And the Rams needed to lose one more game to say, we're getting rid of everybody. We're cleaning house. It's over. Instead, they went on a run because they have Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, and everybody else that they seemingly are going to move on from and start this thing over with. That didn't happen then. It could happen now. I don't know what he comes for. I don't know what the price tag is. I'm going to ask you that question. But I think if it's good enough, if the price tag is at a place where you're not giving up these massive trades or these massive draft picks to go get Cooper Kupp, it opens your world up for so many possibilities. You could talk, why would you go Cooper Kupp? You'd rather go T. Higgins, or you'd rather go DK Metcalf, or you'd rather go Tyreek Hill, or you'd rather go Emeka Egbuka, or Matthew Golden, or whoever. I think all of those possibilities are still on the table. All I look at Cooper Kupp as is a guy that, if it's worth it, if the compensation that you have to give up, which seemingly will not be much, you can't imagine that a team that says we're getting rid of you is looking for a first-round pick or a second-round pick for Cooper Kupp. They have already made it known you're gone. They're just looking for anything they could get at this point. But again, I'll ask you this, or I'll ask you what we're looking for in this compensation, or what you believe the Steelers would have to give up. But I look at it and say, if it's worth it, if it's not worth too much, you can still go sign T. Higgins. You set yourself up for the NFL draft. You set yourself up to decide on George Pickens and say, George can go because we already have Cooper Kupp. Then we sign T. Higgins. Now we're in a place where we're not looking for 2. We already got 2. Let's move on from George and see what we can get, and then head into the NFL draft where maybe we could add a 3rd. Maybe that's a possibility, which I get it. Cooper Kupp is not George Pickens. But Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, and a rookie is not a bad wide receiver room to revamp things. I just think it opens up your possibilities. If you walk into the season with Cooper Kupp, George Pickens, and a first-round pick, that's not terrible. If you walk into the season with Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, and George Pickens, not terrible. If you walk into the season with Cooper Kupp, George Pickens, and everybody else on your roster, But if you walk into the season with Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, and everybody else on your roster, you're kind of in an okay spot. Like I feel like it just sets the Steelers up with the base that they can decide where they're going from here. What do you think you'd have to give up if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers? Do you feel differently about Cooper Kupp than, I mean, I'm on board the trade for Cooper Kupp. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Steelers, and it's more so a security blanket, a safety blanket early in the offseason to say our world of possibilities is wide after this move.
I agree with you on liking the possibility of getting Cooper Kupp. I think you've gone a bridge, maybe 2 bridges, maybe 4 bridges, but you're in Pittsburgh, so it makes sense. Too far when you talk about Cooper Kupp on top of T. Higgins. I don't see that as a possibility. I don't see that as something that the Steelers can pull off this offseason. I don't see that as something that is going to come relatively close to any realm of happening, because I think the Steelers are not going to sit there and say, well, we acquired Cooper Kupp, we gave up a draft pick, which I'll get to in a second, and we took on his $20 million. Now we're going to pay T. Higgins $30 million, and we're going to spend $50 million on this wide receiver room whenever we have no answer at running back. Don't forget, you just depleted a draft asset to go out and get Cooper Kupp. You have nothing at running back besides Jaylen Warren. You need somebody else in that room. You might need to add to the offensive line. They've already showed that they seem to think that at the Senior Bowl. You need to add the defensive line. You need to restructure, or at the very least revamp, that cornerback room. There's just too many other areas that they need to address for me to believe that they're even going to think about going after 2 $20+ million wide receivers, let alone doing it with one. Do I see them doing it with one? Potentially. And I think that's where Cooper Kupp comes into play. In my eyes, it is much more realistic that they can swing a trade for Cooper Kupp, considering the fact that the Rams are saying now, we are ready to trade him. And the groundwork, you have to believe, was already in place around the trade deadline because the Rams were talking to the Steelers. So there's already having conversations, already had conversations on what that would look like. Whereas if you're T. Higgins, he still wants to go back to the Bengals. Now, I believe that that's a farce, that he's not going to be able to get what he wants while the Bengals are able to give Jamar Chase what he wants.
Yeah.
But Higgins has other options. If you can get Cooper Kupp, I think that is a much more realistic option. And I think that conversation starts around a mid-round pick. I think it starts at a 4th. And the question becomes, how okay are the Steelers with his injury history? And how okay are you with his injury history when we're talking about this? Because this is a guy that hasn't played more than 12 games, not just this past season, but in the past 3 seasons. When he plays, he's good. He's sure-handed. He's a good route runner. He's a technician out of the slot. He's somebody that could really help move along Roman Wilson in his progression. But how okay and how worried are you about his injury history? And that's what I think starts to play into effect when you're looking at trade compensation. I think it starts with a 4th in my eyes. I think it goes as high as a 3rd. I don't think the 2nd even becomes part of the conversation because the Rams have already played a card showing their desperation and how quickly they want to move on from him.
Super Bowl 59 is right around the corner, and it's the perfect time to get in on the action with my partners at DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, they're giving all new customers $200 in bonus bets instantly after betting just $5. This is your shot to make every last play a moment to be remembered. Don't wait. Download the DraftKings app now and sign up using our code ALLSteelers. The crown is yours. Stay in on the action and use your $200 in bonus bets on DraftKings same game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets together from the same game. I do it all the time. Love the thrill of live betting? DraftKings has got you covered. Bet live on in-progress games right as they happen, making watching the game that much more exciting. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use my promo code ALLSteelers and bet just $5 on any wager and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code ALLSteelers only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Yeah, I think a 4th is a good spot. I think if he goes for more than a 4th, I'm backing out. I'm okay with not having Cooper Kupp for a 3rd round pick. You could get, to be very honest, you're not going to get Cooper Kupp, but I'd rather take a shot on somebody in the 3rd round, whether it's a running back, a corner, a wide receiver than I would have Cooper Kupp if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers. There are just other options. Cooper Kupp is good. He's super reliable. I still think Cooper Kupp, when healthy, is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. But you could go get Christian Kirk. You can go get Chris Godwin. You could go try to make some crazy splash trade. You could sign George Pickens and go get a first-round pick, and I think that's better than giving up a third for Cooper Kupp. I would feel very comfortable with the fourth. I would feel very comfortable with the fourth. And I agree with you with the numbers when it comes to Cooper Kupp and T. Higgins, but I also see Cooper Kupp as a guy that could come in here. If you're not going to pay Justin Fields a lot of money, if you could, I mean, you're going to have to make some sort of splash at defensive line. I think that's going to happen. And you're probably going to pay $15 million for that splash, somewhere around there. Okay, that's going to be expensive. The running back's going to come in the NFL draft. I think for 1 year, you could figure it out to where Cooper Kupp could be worth $20 million and T. Higgins could be worth 30. Cooper's got to go after a year. This is a 1-year deal for Cooper Kupp. You're cutting him, and you're not taking on. I don't think the cap hit is anything in 2026 if you get rid of him, which makes things easier. But I hear you. It gets very complicated. I think Cooper Kupp, and let me ask you this: a Cooper Kupp and George Pickens plus. I mean, if you're giving up a third round, no, you'd give up a fourth. I'm not even getting into the realm of the third. If the Steelers give up a third round pick for Cooper Kupp, that's a loss. You have not done good enough as Omar Khan to figure this thing out, especially if you're talking second round pick for Brandon Ayuk a year ago. No, AB went for a third round pick at 30 years old. Different wide receiver. If you walk into the season with Cooper Kupp and George Pickens, is that okay? And do you need to get a rookie, like a first 2-round rookie, to kind of finish off that room if that's the route you go?
I think you need to, for the simple fact that I don't know if the future is solidified with George Pickens, right? As of right now, if you walk into the season with Pickens and Kupp, you might be walking into the season with two players that aren't going to be on your roster in 2026. Yeah. And because of how good this draft is right now at the top with wide receivers, I think you do need to bring in that next guy and allow him to start building this year, whether that's Emeka Egbuka, whether that's Luther Burden, whether that's, Matthew Golden or whoever it ends up being. I do think you need another guy, because while I do like Roman Wilson, a year off of football does a lot of things to a player, especially a rookie. We've seen Calvin Austin kind of come out the other side of it, but he's going to go into year 4 and still not be reaching his full potential. So you're pushing these guys who have missed their first year, their development back so far. You're going to need somebody who's going to be able to come in a la a Brian Thomas type year and kind of hit the ground running as a rookie. That way he can kind of get on the same path as some of these other young receivers, like a Roman Wilson, like a Calvin Austin. So even if you end up with Kupp and Pickens, I have no idea what the future holds for either of them in Pittsburgh. So I do think that you'd still need to go to the draft and be able to get somebody in those early rounds.
All right, let me toss a crazy hypothetical at you. Albert Breer said that the Steelers should call the Rams for Matthew Stafford. I'm not saying I'm on board with this. I think Matthew Stafford is easily, hands down, without question, the best quarterback the Pittsburgh Steelers could have in 2025. But I don't, like, in terms of realism, are we talking what's the actual outcome of this offseason? I think it's very, like, the emergency episode we would have if Matthew Stafford got traded to the Steelers would be nuts, and possibly very quiet, because we wouldn't know what to say, because nobody would see it coming. I mean, what are you giving up? Okay. You call the Rams. Hypothetical. We're having fun here. It's the offseason. You call the Rams. They say Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford's on the table. What are you giving up?
Oh, I mean, I don't, whatever I can. I mean, it depends. Are you all in on a Super Bowl next year? If you think
you have to be, if you're going Stafford.
If you think that you're a quarterback and a receiver away, okay, what's your price? Like, name your price. Yeah. Because I think in 2025, the best option you're going to get at quarterback, as you mentioned, is Matthew Stafford. But I think that conversation, you try everything possible to kind of hold back from giving too much, but you're
Yes.
still going to be on the end where you're saying the Rams are driving this negotiation because you're getting a potential future Hall of Famer who showed this year that he still has it left in his arm. And you're getting a wide receiver that is going to vastly improve your wide receiver core. So I think the Rams would be aware of that. And I think that would drive the price up. I don't know if it gets to a first. I don't think that's possible. But I think there's a chance that it gets to a second and maybe a third round pick in this year's draft.
Would you give up a second, George Pickens and Broderick Jones for Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp?
No, you're creating more holes. Like you're going out, like both of them are over 30. You're creating more holes by getting rid of Broderick Jones. I understand there's some people that believe Broderick Jones is the worst football player that's ever touched God's green earth, but that's just simply not the fact. Like people need to take off their bias in this. You're creating a hole. You would need another starting tackle, and you'd be in the same position that you are this year at wide receiver, except you'd have a 31-year-old injury-prone receiver instead of a 23-year-old alien on a rookie contract. So no, I would look at that deal if I was Omar Khan and say, call me back when you want to be serious.